This is world history. In case you forgot what class you were in, this is the first video of week 6. So hopefully you are all able to get your chapter 20 test and the first quiz of chapter 21 in your week 5 packet. Also, hopefully you're able to keep your fast facts for chapter 21. Hopefully you didn't accidentally turn them in. If you did, sorry, I threw them away. So hopefully you were able to keep those fast facts for yourself. We're going to again refer to them today, and you'll need them because you'll be taking the chapter 21 test today. We were in Roman numeral 3, and we were talking about the rise of the dictators, and we began with the Soviet Union. Vladimir Lenin took over, established himself as dictator of the Soviet Union, established a communist state. And that's as far as we finished off last week. We're at big letter C. Russia becomes a communist state. Moscow, St. Petersburg, had been the capital of Russia since Peter the Great. Lenin decided to move the capital to Moscow for safety from German forces. All you need to know about Moscow is it became the new capital. At this time, Russia became known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So if ever I refer to this Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or I say the Soviet Union, or if I say the USSR, or if I say Russia, I'm talking about the same thing. Technically, some of them are different, but I'm talking about the same thing here, so we got that covered. This new country was composed of 15 republics, but the central government in Moscow controlled every aspect of the country. If you look at page 471, it shows you a picture of the Soviet Union. So what did Vladimir Lenin promote? He promoted two main ideas, two main policies. They were called war communism and the new economic policy. Lenin instituted a tightly regulated system of economic control called war communism. It was Lenin's attempt at destroying capital once and for all. It nationalized the industry and demanded that all peasants turn over surplus crops for a set price. So basically what you need to know about war communism, the government controlled everything. Also you need to know is it nearly collapsed the already weak Russian economy. Iron ore production dropped 98.4% in 6 years. Cotton fell 95%. The overall production was only 13% of what it had been. Apparently, communism doesn't work. Shh. Don't tell some people. They think communism's still a great idea. But under Vladimir Lenin, it failed. In order to solve the economic problem that war communism had created, Lenin created the new economic policy. So this came second after war communism. The short definition of new economic policy, it was capitalism in disguise. Private trade and profit-making were legalized again. Ironically, capitalistic principles that Lenin vowed to destroy were what was used to save the communist government and economy. So the new economic policy was a replacement, and it was really capitalism in disguise. Number 3, strengthening of the USSR. Joseph Stalin. He's going to live from 1879 to 1953. When Lenin died, a power struggle for control arose between Leon Trotsky, who we talked about last week, and Joseph Stalin. Trotsky was egotistical, brilliant, and known for his fiery speeches. Stalin was quiet, a dependable party man. yet ruthless and unknown outside of Russia. Well, by 1927, Stalin had taken over, making himself dictator. Although he played a very small part in the revolutions of 1917, as dictator he had accounts of the Bolshevik Revolution rewritten to show him as Lenin's right-hand man. He also had pictures of the revolution repainted, showing him close to Lenin at all times. See how dictators can have history rewritten? And after a period of time, people begin to believe it, or at least are forced to believe it. On page 472, I want you to read the pink box entitled Lenin and Stalin. Hint, those weren't their birth names. But read that box for yourself. Once you have finished reading that pink box, please unpause the video and we will continue. Letter A. So what are Stalin's new plans? His was called the 5-year plans. It was designed to build up industrial production and to collectivize agriculture. Collectivize, the definition of that for you, it means to bring under central government control. So in this case, he wanted to bring all agriculture, all farming under the government's control. Bureaucrats in Moscow demanded industries and agriculture to meet certain quotas each year. Most did not, and Stalin used the secret police to force the people to work harder. Many people were executed, deported, or had their homes burned down. By the beginning of the 1930s, about 1/2 of all the Russian homes had been destroyed. Farmers destroyed their crops and killed their cattle rather than be forced to give it up to the government. The struggle and the resulting famine led to about 5 million Russian deaths. Yet, the government continued to tighten its hold on the people's lives. Letter B, the purges. Stalin often resorted to violence and terror to force his will upon Russian people. Stalin had members of the government and military killed. That's what the purges did, having members of the government and military killed under Stalin's control. This was done in order to eliminate anyone who may have been disloyal to him. About 800,000 members of the communist government were executed. These events created such fear in the Soviet Union that Stalin's power became more secure than it had ever been before. Another thing he did was he also persecuted Christianity. Lenin and Stalin both understood that Christianity was contrary to the beliefs of communism and sought to wipe it out. Lenin once said about Christianity, every idea of God, even flirting with the idea of God, is unutterable vileness. Vileness of the most dangerous kind, contagion of the most abominable kind. Millions of sins, filthy deeds, acts of violence, and physical contagions are far less dangerous than the subtle spiritual idea of a God decked out in the smartest ideological costumes. They hated Christianity. They hated all religions because that meant worshiping someone or something other than themselves. On page 473, there is a box entitled Peter Vin's Choosing Rather to Suffer Affliction. I want you to read that box to yourself. Once you finish reading, please unpause and we will continue. Letter C, foreign policy. Lenin believed that the communist revolution would quickly spread to other countries in the world, and he devoted time and effort to try to accomplish it. The plan was called Comintern. It means Communist International, and it was intended to create communist parties and stir up revolutions in other countries. That's what you need to know about it. Stalin believed that by building up communism in the Soviet Union first, then the Soviet Union would conquer all who opposed them. You can see, of course, by the end of the 1930s, Stalin's power was absolute, and the fact that many people died was insignificant to him. 1 death is a tragedy, he once said. 1 million deaths is a statistic. Another farmer once said, "I love Stalin. I love him so much, I wish he would be buried here." The idea is he didn't love Stalin, he'd rather have him dead. Letter B, Fascism or Nazism in Italy and Germany. Now, in your fast facts, the following notes that we're about to cover is located on it, so you don't need to write any of this down. Unless you lost your fast facts, then you might want to do so. Fascism, by the way, was Nazism in Germany. They are synonymous. Many of the citizens of those countries had grown discouraged with democracy, yet they feared communism in Russia. Fascism seemed to provide an attractive alternative because it promised stability and prosperity. First thing we need to know is, what's the difference between communism and fascism? First of all, in your notes, I have it, or on your fast facts, you have it divided up. First of all, fascism, businesses were privately owned, but rigorously controlled by the government. While under communism, the government owned and controlled all businesses. We saw that with Lenin and Stalin. Number two, fascism is highly nationalistic. That means they are patriotic. They support the specific country that they are a part of. While under communism, ideally, they are seeking a classless international society. No one is rich, no one is poor, no one is German, no one is French, no one is Russian. Everyone follows in this perfect classless society. Number three, military dictatorship would openly govern. The dictator, like Mussolini or Stalin, Mussolini or Hitler controlled everything. While under communism, a military dictatorship secretly governed. Supposedly, it was the Communist Party that controlled everything, but of course, we already know it was actually Stalin who controlled everything. And then number four, the fascist government glorifies the state. Again, they're all about patriotism, loyalty to their government. While number four, under communism, ideally, the government will eventually fade away. But the fact of the matter is, and sorry that a little bit's cut off at the bottom, there is little difference in the everyday life of the people. Both firmly control the people and greatly restrict their liberties. Quickly, let's talk about the first of the fascist countries, Italy. Italy arrived into the 1920s a disappointed and dispirited Allied nation. In spite of Italy's sacrifices for joining the war, which included 500,000 casualties, the country gained very little from being on the winning side. Italy did not receive any additional colonies as Britain and France had gotten. Italy's border did not expand as far as it thought it should. Economically, strikes, inflation, and debt plagued the country. Politically, small party faction created disunity and hindered government action. Things were bad, and then came their savior, Benito Mussolini. He lived from 1883 to 1945. He was the son of a blacksmith and a well-known socialist before World War I. But he abandoned socialism because he supported Italian entrance into the war. He became the leader of the fascist party and dictator of Italy. That's what you need to know about him. The party took as its emblem the symbol of authority ancient Rome, called the fasces. That's the bag of sticks with the axe sticking out, hence fascism. In 1922, he persuaded the king of Italy to make him premier, in other words, dictator. He will turn Italy into a totalitarian state. He became dictator but maintained the appearance of a representative government, just like Octavian, the first Roman emperor, had done nearly 2,000 years before. In fact, Mussolini saw himself as reviving the old Roman Empire and becoming a Caesar. The fascist party was the power in Italy, with Mussolini as its head. The title that Mussolini gave himself was Il Duce. That's a capital I, lowercase l, in case you're wondering on the screen. It means leader, and this was a title given to Mussolini. Mussolini's goal to make Italy economically self-sufficient was called autarky. In Italy, there were 13 syndicates that dealt with different divisions of the workforce, all under the watchful eye of the government. He had no clearly defined political program like other dictators. He suppressed freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and opposed parties, yet his own political philosophy was rather vague. Unfortunately, that's all the material that we have time for today. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be good, do good.